Hello, sports moms. Welcome to Always a Sports Mom, episode 4 Making the Dream His Own. This is the podcast for moms of boys who never stop being sports moms, even after the season ends, where real conversations lead to takeaways you can actually put into play with your son. I'm Trish, and I'll never stop being a sports mom. Now, today we're talking about perseverance, passion, and one of the hardest things we do as sports moms. And that would be learning when to step back and let our children own their journey. My guest this episode is actually my sister, Cherri Prince. Together, we discuss her son's baseball journey through multiple colleges, setbacks, moments when he even lost his love for the game, and ultimately the decision to undergo shoulder surgery in order to keep pursuing his dream. Along the way, we'll explore an important lesson for all sports moms. Sometimes our role isn't to carry the dream for our children, but to support them as they discover it for themselves. But first, let's head over to Sideline School, where we break down sports terms and concepts so you can feel more confident on the sidelines. Have you ever heard another parent mention a redshirt athlete or he's having a redshirt year and wondered what in the world they were talking about? Well, let's talk about it here. In college athletics, a redshirt is an athlete who practices with the team but does not compete in enough games to use a whole year of athletic eligibility. Now, you may be wondering, why would an athlete do that? Sometimes it's because they're not physically ready to compete at the college level yet, and sometimes it's because they need time to develop their skills, and even other times it's because an injury prevents them from playing. Now, most college athletes have four seasons of competition that's available to them. But a redshirt year allows them to remain part of the program while preserving one of those 4 years, a whole season of eligibility for the future. Now, you may have also heard the term medical redshirt, and this can apply when an athlete suffers a pretty significant injury and is unable to compete for most of the season. And while the rules may vary depending on the sport and the level of competition, the important thing to understand is that redshirting is often a strategic decision that allows an athlete additional time to develop and recover or prepare for future opportunities. And if you happen to be a trivia lover like me and wondered why it's called particularly a red shirt, the term actually goes back to the early days of college athletics when players who weren't competing, they often wore a red practice jersey. So everyone knew, hey, that guy, he's not game eligible. The name stuck, and today athletes across many sports still use the term red shirt. And now you know a little more than the average sports mom sitting in the stands. And there you go, Sideline School. Okay, let's move on to our next segment, Heart of the Game. Today, I'd like to share the story of former Major League Baseball player Rick Ankiel. As a young pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals, Ankiel was considered one of the brightest prospects in baseball. He had tremendous talent and appeared destined for a long and successful career on the mound. But during the 2000 postseason, something unexpected happened. He suddenly lost the ability to consistently throw strikes. The problem became so severe that many believed his pitching career was completely over. Now, most athletes would have walked away. Instead, Rick Ankiel spent years trying to find another path. Nearly 7 years after his pitching struggles first captured national attention, he returned to the major leagues. But guess what? Not as a pitcher, but as an outfielder. He essentially built a second career. What I love about Rick Ankiel's story is that perseverance didn't mean pretending everything was fine. It didn't mean forcing things to happen exactly as planned. it meant finding another path forward. Sometimes our sons will face setbacks. Sometimes they'll lose confidence. And sometimes they'll even lose their passion for something they once loved. And in those moments, our job as sports moms isn't always to have the answers. Sometimes it's simply to stay in their corner while they find their own way forward. And that brings me to today's guest. Every sports mom eventually discovers that the journey belongs to her child, even while she continues walking alongside him. In today's conversation, Cherri Prince shares what that looked like as she supported her son Frankie through college baseball, setbacks, difficult decisions, and some important life lessons along the way. Let's listen in. Today's guest is someone very special to me, my sister, Cherri Prince. Over the years, she has walked a baseball journey with her son Frankie that hasn't always followed a straight line. Together, we'll talk about perseverance, setbacks, college baseball, and what it means to continue showing up as a sports mom through every stage of the journey. Cherri, welcome to Always a Sports Mom.
Thanks, Trish. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
We are so happy to have you. So let's get started with, could you tell us a little bit about your son and his baseball journey?
Yes. Well, Trish, not a straight line is a definite, accurate description. Probably like a lot of kids in baseball. He started when he was 4, playing t-ball. And his name is Frankie, but it was always funny. They called him Frank the Tank. He was a tiny little guy. And after t-ball, he, found the love of the sport and continued with Little League and then ultimately high school and college after that. But it was, fits and starts along the way. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but yeah, it was a early passion that he really took to.
Now tell us, what did you love most about those early baseball years?
Yeah. It's funny. There's the quote, I think it's Maya Angelou, that says, you'll remember more how someone or an experience made you feel than the actual, experience in itself. And that's how I think about my memories with baseball. Those early days, I remember my mother-in-law being there, and she was everybody's grandma Shirley, and she was super fun and silly in the stands. I remember meeting the other families and all just united by just such pride and excitement and joy for our kids. Of the whole journey, I think those years, that like 5, 6, and 7, I mean, even when it was still, dad's pitching and sometimes running the wrong way or, kind of toddling around looking at a fly or a butterfly in the outfield.
In the grass.
Yeah. I those are the days that I think are fondest to me because it was the most innocent and the most pure, the most not political, which we'll talk about later, but that was just a pure joy of it. I felt it as a mom, and my husband felt it, and our family. And I think Frankie and the boys and the coaches just all felt like it was just, pure joy, joyful and innocent, fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
It's a game.
Yeah, I love that. I talked about this in a prior episode, but I love when the ball would get hit off the tee or whatever, and then every player, every position would run for that ball. Like even the dugout guys, hey, I'm going for it.
Yeah, right. Still not even. Yeah, and you would just laugh, and it was so sweet. It wasn't serious. It wasn't so serious. Yes, that was a great time.
Exactly. Well, so many sports families imagine a certain path that their child is going to take, but so rarely does that journey unfold into, exactly what you expect. So was there ever a time when you thought his baseball journey might be over? Mm-hmm. And what happened?
Yes. Well, as he as he moved out of, dad pitch, he became a pitcher, and he was a really, so this is like 7, 8. He was a really good pitcher, and he, grew, and he was on a team that was potentially going to go to Cooperstown.
Mhm.
And that's when it got, for lack of a better word, kind of political. Of the
Yeah.
dads that were the coaches, they were getting more pitching time, and it became frustrating. And ultimately, he wasn't, the way it was going with the coaches and the playing time. Um, we opted out of him going to Cooperstown, and that became, we soured a bit on baseball, and he also just didn't have the drive or the joy. It was more, you need to practice to get better, and
Right.
he wasn't. So it felt like maybe this is that kind of just natural end to a great
Hmm.
time in his life, and there'll be other things that he has. So I really did at that point think that it might be over. But then we found another little league that we were also kind of zoned for, and we joined that, and that had kind of a good run. And then somebody put together another team, and this is all, in middle school, so before, high school, when that's at the whole other level. But during that time, i I thought, I don't think he loves it as much, because if he did, from my point of view, is like when you love something, and you're going to practice, you're going to practice because it's joyful, and it's a game. And he didn't as much. And so I thought that would be kind of the end. So it picked up in high school again with another passion. But those were some middle years where I thought it would be over, and I was okay with it, because that taste of the politics of it, or the
Right.
favoritism, was just, it was hard to watch. And he'd get frustrated, and we would get frustrated. We weren't one of those
Right.
crazy obnoxious, we were more the stuff it down quietly get frustrated in the stands. And Frank, my husband, and I would like kind of debrief it later. But it all in all just didn't feel like joyful anymore. Now that, I mean, I
Right.
haven't connected the dots, Trish, until this conversation, but it's just a stark contrast to what it was to what it became in those kind of middle school years, in that period where, there was the Cooperstown, there was the, all the travel teams, and winning
Right.
trophies, that just, it became more about that than the
Hmm.
joy of the game.
Isn't it amazing how a coach, a particular coach, or the cohesion of a team just makes all the difference sometimes.
Hmm. Yes, yes. And that fell apart a bit too, because it used to, part of those memories where, when they were like, 8 and 9, and we were starting to do travel, that cohesion of the coaches and the families, which
Yes.
were kind of one and the same. The coaches were all dads too. We'd stay a night in a, Spring Hill Suites or an Embassy Suites, and part of the experience was the, big long table, the boys
Yes.
being rowdy, and the, like, hotel lobby, kind of, maybe a game was on, and maybe there was a bar, and the moms would kind of all chitter chat, and, and that that was part of the fun too. But that was part of that, when it was that strong cohesion. And then cliques formed. Isn't that true? Kind of a lot of times in life. So with the parents and things.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's when, again, that was part of that not so great time too.
Well, it's kind of funny, and I may feature this on a future podcast, but um, sometimes you feel more sad when a season ends, because doesn't it typically feel like, especially when you're in rec sports, little league, and you haven't really gone to the travel level yet, but you get to know those families, those moms and those dads, and then all of a sudden is gone. You're
Yes.
you're like you're it in not in a negative way, but you're forced to be with them at practices, at games, and you just get to know them, and you really have such a love for the team. There is a
Yes.
sadness. Tell me if I'm off on this, but there
Oh,
is a sadness when the season ends and the kids are like, "Okay, I'm ready to go on to the next, whatever they're doing." But I was like, I remember just thinking, I'm gonna miss these people. You might see them again the next season. You might be on the
it,
same team, you might not. But, can you share
Oh,
any
yeah.
insight on that?
Oh, totally. I mean, there were some, you know, families that you would kind of track along with, but
Hmm.
yeah, you go, oh, remember, Conrad and
Yeah.
Christy, and Conrad always had his kind of really professional camera and would upload, and
Right,
then
right,
he was just
right.
a really just super funny. And yeah, I totally relate to you, missing the particular kind of cohort of parents.
Right,
And then
exactly.
as a, again, kind of reflecting on this now as an empty nester, looking back, you don't realize how much of your social life, like,
Oh,
I
oh,
don't have any
100%.
I don't have any friends anymore. When you
Really?
miss, your kids both through sports, like for in our case was baseball, but also, school and things like that too. So yeah, that family part is really, really important.
Can you touch on a little bit now? You've talked through the junior high years, and now moving into high school.
Yes.
And of course, our focus on Always a Sports Mom is the sports mom. We love to talk about our kids, and we love to share their accomplishments. But when he went into high school and started playing, and of course, I'm sure you and your husband were always there at those games. What was that experience like for you and for your son, but also for you during high
Yes.
school?
Yes. Yes. Well, his freshman year and this high school we were zoned for, um, aptly named Steinbrenner after the
Yes.
famous, infamous George Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
Um, he couldn't get on that team, and it was the definition of political, and
Uh,
it was who you knew, um, and it was known for it. We kind of went in knowing that. So he continued to play travel ball like his first freshman and sophomore year. They almost the high school almost had kind of like a farm team that
yes,
was
yes.
connected to them, because they, a lot of kids wanted to play baseball. And so each year there was a little bit of kind of hope, and that he was still connected to the high school team because of that relationship. But what turned out, and I think this was around COVID, that and at this point, by the way, when I said he, had in middle school kind of stopped practicing, he was in full, I want to do this in every fitness. He got super fit. He was eating great. He was practicing all the time.
Let me
To
interrupt.
Yeah.
How did you feel? How did you feel when you saw that change in him from I don't want to go to practice anymore to I am all in?
Yes. Well, that's where I thought, and how I felt was, I think he really wants this again,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
that, so I was supportive, but I also, especially as a mom, you want to make everything right for your kids, and seeing him not get on the team, and also knowing that, gosh, even if he was pitching at 90 miles an hour, he probably wasn't going to get on this team because of who we did or didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for him to be happy for it, but I also, didn't know where it was going, because of the limitations of the school. And kind of a fun, I think, in hindsight, a funny story is during COVID, and he was kind of a rising junior. Him and my husband were talking about, well, we need to figure out how to tell mom about this. And I walk in like, what you
You
talking
were
about?
innocently, going
Yeah,
along.
what you talking about? And it was that he wanted to transfer to another high school that he has a really close friend on, that he had proactively gone and had his friend introduce him to Coach North. And he said, I think you're a good player. I think you're a good pitcher, and we could use you. He said, you can use some coaching. And this coach was known to be a great coach. And so he had taken an initiative, and him and Frank talked about it. And, as a mom, the school, the quality, the rating, I guess, we live in Florida, there's kind of A, B, and C schools. And the rating of the school, academically at least, was not as good as the school we were at. So I think I had and he had asked me about transferring to that school before, and I was kind of like, why would you do that from a academic standpoint? But the two of them were talking, and then I, did like, what's going on? What's going on? And I said, okay, let's, Dad and I will talk about it. And I took kind of all day to incubate a bit on it. And my husband and I that night, Frank, Frank, Frank and I that night said, you know what? It was the COVID effect of life is short. You never know what's going to happen. And he has really did all this, such initiative, and maybe his path, how we just have to support it. And I just
Right.
kind of let go my vision of like academics and why would you, why would you not, choose the better school? It was the right school for him. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
when he got, and that's when that was the fun. So we had 2 years truly playing at the high school level, being at the games, with some of the, funny enough, some of the boys from Little League were
Oh,
on, so
how perfect.
reconnected to some,
Yeah.
and those moms that I love
Yeah.
too. So it kind of came, full circle. So that was a great moment to see, and then this will continue in when we talk to college, just that initiative, and that he really wants this and I want to support it. And just, it became less about baseball and more about supporting a dream.
Right.
This is his dream.
Yeah.
I won't judge it if I think he will or won't make it to minor or major league baseball. It became, how might I, as a mom, support his dream?
Right. Wow. And it sounds like it was almost intuitive that you just, this feels right. Did you have a piece
Yes,
at some point about
that's
this is, yeah.
that's a great word for it, because he also never seemed happier once he started.
Okay.
And
That's the mom dream.
yeah,
That
right.
sports or not,
Happy,
that's the
healthy.
mom dream,
Hmm.
That it
Yes.
sounded like certainly his passion was there and his just general love and
Yeah.
excitement, for
Yes.
playing.
All of
I mean,
that
you can
was
see that just comes right through. So, okay, let's transition. So he did go on to play in college in multiple colleges and,
mhm.
pursuing his baseball dream. So, what was that like, or that experience like for you as a sports mom during his college journey?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it started in, his senior year, like, or actually probably late junior year, like every kid that wants to pursue college, regardless, that starts, and start, looking at different options. But, when it comes to baseball, there's meeting the coaches and going there. And, so the first school that I was, most involved in with meeting the coaches it is um they were great, and they were, we see a ton of potential. And that's when they really identified his kind of unique pitching style, which is more like a
Mm-hmm.
sidearm. He's a righty, but more of a sidearm. And that it's a really special. That's when he became really specialized with pitching. It was a PO, as a pitcher only, and which is by his choice, that he wanted to really focus. And they had identified, like, we really want to work on that sidearm because it'll be great as a relief pitcher, like to really
Right.
kind of mess with a batter. So they, as a little foreshadowing, they said all the right things, that we felt really, good about it. And he had, a good experience through the fall, which is playing, but mostly scrimmages and things. Of course, the
Right.
season isn't until the spring. And then that's where I guess things, much like, kind of to go back to that kind of, middle school period, where all of a sudden it feels like, oh, well, he's not playing as much, or and especially as
Mm-hmm.
a pitcher, when they really ended up over recruiting. So they had a
Oh,
ton,
no. Yeah.
and he was a relief, and this kind of unique. So it just led to not a lot of playing. And just some frustration with how it worked out. So I bet I know, Trish, you're gonna ask, how did that make me feel? Which was
You know me too well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. A few years I've known you. I've known you all my life. um, is I had my doubts again for that
Yeah.
dream, like before the piece, like, okay, let's pursue it. And I was like, wow, and this is college at this point, where
Yeah.
my, I guess, kind of, mantra became like, what's the plan? Where's the path? Because that's how I'm a planner. I kind of always knew. So back to the straight line metaphor, that's not him. And he
Yeah.
really, said, well, it'll be finding another one pretty confidently. Like, I'll find another one. And
Find
I,
another college?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. Which he ended up doing and had done, ended up doing twice now. But that that just wasn't, that was so different from my path of more of a straight line kind of path. But I that's probably where I went back and forth of, as a mom, do you support it, or is it the time? And I'd had other parents say this, like, is it the time you just say
Mm-hmm.
stop, and I think ultimately Frank and I both felt like, as his discipline increased, as his focus and his work ethic, his faith even
Yeah.
increased, we kind of said, these can't be a bad thing. These aren't bad
Right.
things. So how, if that's going to be a lifetime of a foundation for whatever he pursues. So that's where we just said, if his pathway to get disciplined and build his work ethic is through baseball, that may or may not go any, where, and still had some time where he wasn't playing much. Wow, bless him, for having
Right.
that,
Right.
that perseverance, which was impressive. So it kind of became, I said before it was about the dream, then it became more about to raise a young man with a work ethic and a faith and a discipline the way he was showing. It's like, okay, that's what the lesson of baseball is in this stage for him.
What do you think what do you think people on the outside don't understand about that process that you went through?
I think there's probably a lot of judgment
Mm,
to, you know, you're not being a good parent because you should be the one that says, like, get back on track and just pursue become an accountant, or get your degree, and there's a lot of people who don't get degrees in 4 years, in five
right.
years, later in life, that in our own family, there's many paths. But I think that what they don't understand is the that it can be that there's more to um there's more to it than just clicking along each year, advancing on his degree, which, he has been taking courses along the way. And
Right.
that they don't get that the the it can, I think the belief is that, you'd be a better and kinder parent if you just said, kid, move on, you gave it
Right.
your best
Hang
shot.
up your cleats and let's
Yeah.
like get a pursue something real,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Right. Right.
So,
I have faith that his path will reveal itself. And I think it is now, because with all these, and, I know, that he's had a injury recently, but he's had injuries along the way. So he's worked with a lot of trainers in the past
mhm,
4
mhm.
years, and he's developed a real interest in working with, and in a real curiosity about methods for training and how they do it. And his path now is he's has a year that he's taking off, and he's going to study more sports training or sports therapy or sports medicine in some way. And that may be the thing that reveals itself, but he's excited about that. So for someone to have injuries and then that fuels their passion and interest and excitement of, Ooh, I like actually helping people recover, get stronger, and that's revealing itself now.
So we've talked about disappointments and setbacks, and then you've mentioned transfers and things that didn't go as planned. What advice would you give to another sports mom on how you supported your son through these disappointments and setbacks and other things that didn't go as planned?
Well, you're going to be familiar with this one as my sister and uh, as us both having the same mom who we love dearly. I channeled her, which was it's all
Mm,
going to be okay. And I think
yep.
that as the advice to parents for both your son or daughter to say, you know, to them, it's all going to be okay and say it with complete faith and conviction. But as the mom, say it to yourself too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Look in the
Say it.
mirror
Yeah.
when you say it. Yeah,
Yes,
for
you have
sure.
to say it to yourself too. And, I also learned from mom that, and I've said this before, that it was helpful, especially as I was getting older, because I mean, he's an adult now, he's 22, that as I got older, she would say to me, I've experienced a lot in my life that may not be the exact same thing, but that had a similar feeling. And I saw that it worked out. So that's where that conviction of saying it's all going to work out won't feel cliche, like, yeah, yada,
Right.
yada, yada. No,
Yeah.
it actually does. Look, around at
Right.
what we have and all our blessings. So I would say that's my
100%.
advice.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned briefly a recent injury. Well, maybe it's been an ongoing
Hmm.
concern, but
Yeah.
what was it like to help him or watch him make the decision to undergo this most recent surgery? And which with the goal, of course, of continuing to pursue
Hmm.
playing baseball. So, what went into that decision? And maybe there wasn't really a decision because it had to be done just for him to function properly and for the rest of his life. But, what kind of went through that whole process?
Yes. Yes. Well, I'd say that he showed a lot of a leadership, authority over. And I look back at, and it was just, it just happened, and the surgery was in May, and it was on his pitching, his right shoulder, his labrum. So it's arthroscopic surgery. So it could have been, much more, extensive surgery, but enough to where it was surgery. He's still in sling and physical therapy, but the decision to do it was on the heels of so much hard work and having
Mhm.
gotten, it was, as you mentioned, Trisha, it was kind of probably an ongoing thing, but he had gotten such good coaching and was getting better. And then he had the setback, but he had a glimpse of what he could be in his
Mhm.
mind and how he could pitch and perform, and felt it, saw the improvement, and had coaches affirm it, that it became a very confident decision when he came to us and said, I'd like to do this. I'll be red shirt for a year. I'll move home. He's going to attend it's college here in Tampa. Um, I'll get a job along with that. It just, he had worked it all through, and I was really proud of him, that,
Right.
of how he thought it through, and that it's, again, it's faith over fear is what he
Mhm.
demonstrated. I think he probably could have, if he wasn't pitching, not had this surgery. It wasn't, I think, but back to the lessons of baseball, is he is an active athletic kid and just wants to have an active athletic life. And so I think, in the back of his mind, it's for baseball, but it's also just, wanting to be completely strong and healthy and active, his whole life. So I was I was proud of his making all the, largely he did the
His
research on the
adulting.
His
He was
adulting.
adulting.
Yes. He had researched and done a lot of fact finding and discovery with his coaches on the best surgeon who was in Pensacola, which is 7 hours from here. So it's not, it's a bit of a drive and not easy to fly there. But even that, it was like, I'll do it. I'll drive, of course, Frank with him and, for the surgery, of course. But he's, sticking with his physical therapy and sees the end in mind, which is such an important, again, trait in people
Right.
to, know what's really important.
So, Cherri, what have you learned about you as the mom, learned about perseverance from watching your son chase this dream? And I don't mean to demean it at all,
Yeah.
but what have you learned personally about perseverance?
Yes. Having not been an athlete myself, and I have a daughter who's probably more like me from more of an academic, academics and speech and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the internal wiring to kind of get the pull of athletics.
I'm sure a lot of sports moms feel that way.
Yeah, right, right.
I did hear something, you may have heard this, that, and I'm not sure if it was male athletes, let's just say it is, male athletes get their athleticism from their mom.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
scientific study,
Yeah.
don't quote me, but.
Right, okay.
And maybe it's generations back of their
Yeah,
mom.
right, right. Yeah, okay, I'll buy that. I think that's good. But back to what I learned about perseverance and what I observed and learned from Frankie wasn't Lance Armstrong's book called It's Not About the Bike.
Mm.
And his point was it wasn't about the bike. It was all the things around it, the lessons, the learnings, the discipline, the why of it. And I think that's what I learned and saw in him and am so proud of for him. And then mapping it over to me, it's like, well, I just had a different path, but maybe back to your get it from mom. Maybe he didn't get I can guarantee he didn't get the necessarily athleticism and, kind of 2 left feet, but maybe that's part of, I do feel like I have that kind of experience in my life needing a lot of grit and perseverance, and that,
Mm-hmm.
that's what he has and continues to get from baseball, and it'll serve him well for the rest of his life. And, hopefully if, he has kids someday, that will be the lesson there too, that it wasn't about the baseball itself, but everything that came around from it.
Oh, and that's one of the reasons why I love sports so much, and especially for our children. And especially because Always a Sports Mom is geared towards moms of sons, that the life lessons they learn playing sports are so numerous. You can't even count them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just develops them into the young men that, we hope that they'll become. And playing sports, being on a team, discipline, perseverance, everything we've talked about today is really what, to me, epitomizes the so many benefits of playing sports.
100%. Yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No.
As we wrap up, this has been so fun. But as we wrap up, I have a question for you. If Frankie were listening today, and he may listen at some point, but if he were listening today, what would you want him to know about what it has meant to you to be his sports mom?
Oh, that's kind of a tearjerker.
That's okay. We're all about emotion.
Yeah.
You can't be a sports mom without getting emotional.
Yeah.
But before you answer that, as a pitcher's mom, is that, and my son pitched as well, and there is nothing like being a pitcher's mom. you are, or quarterback, because my son was also a quarterback, but you know, they are
Yes.
so in the limelight and you feel like everyone's looking at you. Oh gosh, can you just briefly, really briefly talk about being a pitcher's mom
Yes. Yes. That
for those
was
pitcher's moms out there?
well, it's I guess it's the pitcher's mom paradox, which is
Yeah.
like a lot of things in life. It's like the most the most thrilling,
Yes.
time when they're on the mound, and it's the most terrifying at
Oh,
the same time.
exactly. The
Yes.
pacing.
Yeah, how you can in one moment experience those emotions, and then the highs and lows of a strike. Yes. And then the like, oh, he hit it
Ball,
better.
ball, walk,
Yeah,
walk.
right. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah,
They're
right,
pulling
right.
when the coach walks up to the mound. Oh, dagger
Uh,
in the heart.
yes, you feel every bit of it. Yes, and it is feels very, very vulnerable and very visible.
Mhm.
Um, so back to you said, what would I want Frankie to know
What
about?
has meant to you?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I'm just so just so proud of him. He was always and still is in and out of baseball, the encourager, the he wasn't the loudest kid, but he was the quiet encourager and of others, and um just a great, so always respectful to the coaches,
Hmm.
and um just a good, just kind, funny, sweet. Yeah, I'm just really, proud of him for that, and proud of how it showed up on the field, and how it continues to, and in life, and the man he's become. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's so sweet. And that's what we want, right?
Yeah,
That's what we
right.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sherry, thank you so much for sharing your son's story and your story as his mom. I have so enjoyed this conversation, and
Me
I know
too.
so many sports moms will see parts of their journey in yours. So
Yes.
thank you for being
Oh,
here
thank you.
today.
It was my pleasure.
Well, it's all my pleasure too to have you on Always a Sports Mom. Thank you. One of the things that stayed with me from my conversation with Sherry was hearing how Frankie lost his passion for baseball more than once. As sports moms, it can be difficult to watch our children step away from something they've invested so much of their time and energy into. And let's face it, our time and energy. It's even harder when we can see potential in them that they may not see in themselves. But what struck me was that Sherry didn't force the passion. She didn't carry the dream for him. Instead, she gave him the space to figure out what he wanted. And each time he found his way back to the game on his own. As parents, we spend years teaching and guiding, encouraging, driving, cheering, and supporting. But there comes a point when our children have to make those decisions for themselves. Listening to Sherry talk about Frankie's journey reminded me that some of the most important lessons in sports happen far away from the scoreboard. When he lost his passion and found it again, he learned something about perseverance. When he researched his options and made the decision to undergo shoulder surgery, he learned something about responsibility. When he continued pursuing his goals despite setbacks and uncertainty, he learned something about resilience. And maybe that's one of the greatest gifts sports can give our children. Sports aren't just preparing them for the next game, they're preparing them for life. As sports moms, one of the hardest things we do is gradually loosen our grip and trust our children to take ownership of their own journey. But when they do, we get to watch something remarkable happen. The dream becomes theirs. So, as always, we'll close with the prayer we share as sports moms. Prayer of an athlete's mom. This is the prayer that you'll hear every game. My requests each time are always the same. Protect his body and protect his mind. Keep him injury free and rarely sidelined. And if he should put his sport above you, remind him how it is he can do what he do. Because without your love and blessings on him, well, let's just say it may be harder to win. Amen and amen. I can't wait for our next conversation. Until then, enjoy the game.